we're going to talk about some 1970s Speedway riders who tragically passed away. We're very sorry for their loss. You know, a lot of Speedway riders of the 70s are leaving us, and we certainly are not liking that. But today we're going to talk about three Speedway riders. The one was very well known, the other one was medium well known, the other one was lesser well known. And we're going to talk about them right now. Our first rider was very well known. He was a two-time track champion at Nampa Speedway and Cal Expo. He was a Northern California rider, and he died tragically. He wore those purple and white leathers. I got a chance to race against him one time, and he was a quality racer, and he died tragically, and that was Roland, Rich McMurray. Rich was a popular fixer in Northern California. He was very popular. Everyone liked Rich. He just had that twinkle in his eye. He helped all the people who asked him for help. He never shied away from anyone who needed the help. And Roland Rich McMurray, he had a good name, and he was sorely missed by everyone, especially in Speedway after he had passed away in 1980. Tragically, he had an airplane crash and he died instantly. I think it was in Reno or Nevada or something like that. But it's very tragic that we lost him. And like I mentioned, I had a chance to race him. I think it was like 78 at the Santa Ana Bowl in the World Qualifier. And I had him in my race in a scratch heat. And I knew that this guy had a big name before, because I think he won his championships and stuff in like 74, 75. So I knew this guy was good. I had to give it all that I had to beat him. And lucky for me, I beat Rich. I won that race. But I knew that when I raced Roland Rich McMurray, that he was good. And he was the first Northern California rider to race in the United States versus the world. And he just was a popular rider and a very well-known rider as well. Our next rider was number 17, I believe, and his name is Mark Churf. And he passed away in like 2015. I noticed his wife had passed away at 2002, and he lived locally in Orange County, and he was a good rider, and I had raced against him. He was like one of those earlier day riders back in the 74, 73, and he had qualified to race for the national championship. He placed 15th place at Urbandale one year in 74, and I believe he failed to qualify for the national championship in 1974. But Mark Churf was a quality rider, and he definitely could ride that Speedway bike, like I mentioned. And when I had interviewed Steve Colombo about 4 months ago, he was telling me that he was like the remaining surviving person of his friends, which was Guy Watterson and Mark Churf. They hung around, especially, they partied. They had a good time together. And then just 4 months or so after, he told me that Steve Colombo had passed away, rest in peace. So they all three now have passed away, Guy Watterson, Mark Churf, now Steve Colombo. But Mark passed away in April of 2015. Steve told me like what happened, but I forgot what it was. He had some kind of cancer or disease or something. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but he had passed away. And one time when I raced Mark Churf, Mark is at Costa Mesa, and I was coming out of turn 2 at Costa Mesa, and Mark stuck his tire right in my front tire, his back tire, and I had to kind of slow down or I was going to crash. He just stuffed me right into the wall, put his back tire. He knew how to ride good, and I had to slow it down. I can't remember if I beat him or not that race. I believe I did, but I can't remember. It was so long ago. But I just remember Mark Churf was a good rider, a quality rider, and he definitely was part of the early day gang that raced Speedway, that competed, that was racing the circuit back in the day. And Mark Churf, I never got to really meet him except for on the racetrack. but I heard he was a good guy, fun guy, good loving guy, and rest in peace. Number 17, that was Mark Cherf. Our last rider we're going to talk about, he passed away April 6, 1977. And he was a very lesser well-known rider. He was a top D2 rider. He was moving up, and he had a chance to really be a great rider, to race in D1, and to be a really, really competitive rider. And his name is Fred Sidner II. Now, Fred, he wore these like baby blue leathers with white. He had a KRW helmet, blue and white, and he was just a good rider. I remember Fred from when I was just starting Speedway as a D3 rider, looking up to him, and he was solid. The guy could really fly around the Speedway track. He was a D2 rider, moving up. He was like, I think in handicap, like on the 30 or 40 yard line in D2. He could really ride, and he could really push those guys out of his way. He was definitely talented. He passed away at age 20. So he was a very young rider, and I knew him at like age 18 or 19. And Fred would oftentimes be intoxicated or on drugs at the racetrack. A few times I noticed, and I couldn't believe it, you know, because he would be really high on a few things. And I just like couldn't believe that somebody with that talent would, you know, be into drugs and things like that. Like, and also be at the Speedway races when he wasn't racing like that. But he had passed away at age 20 in 1977, April 6th, and he's buried at Westminster Cemetery near Huntington Beach, California. And it's just such a tragic that the drugs had taken the life of this young man at age 20. He was a promising young man, and he was a good guy. I think I talked with him a couple times, and he was a nice guy, and, you know, he was down to earth. He was a cool dude. And I was just so shocked when he had passed away. A lot of people probably do not remember Fred because he probably wasn't a big name Speedway rider at the time. But I remember him, and he was good. And like I say, his number was 264. One of the cool things about Fred is on his headstone at Westminster Memorial Park, his racing number 264 is ingrained on his headstone with the logo of the SRA. Do you remember the SRA? The Speedway Racing Association. President Jerry Fairchild. And his headstone has the logo of the SRA. So Fred Sidner, he was a serious Speedway rider. And Speedway was a big part of his life. And it's just so sad that these guys have passed away. Sad that Fred kind of had to utilize drugs and substances that took his life, because at age 20, it's just far too young for anyone to pass away, especially one with the talent that Fred Sidner II had. Roland Rich McMurray passed away at like 26 or 28. He's very young. And Mark Cherf passed away at 58. So it's just sad, and we're losing a lot of the people in the Speedway community. And we're so sad, you know, that these things are happening. But that's life, you know, life is fragile. So we want to thank you so much for hanging out with us today, talking about the people who have fallen. Our series is called Fallen Speedway Riders of the 1970s. So please do not be upset about that title, because that's pretty much with everybody who has fallen. And there's a lot of Speedway riders that has fallen, and we're sad to report that. But thank you so much for hanging out with us. Please subscribe, like this show. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we're going to see you, of course, we're going to see you next time. Take care.